Welcome to the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This is the podcast where we discuss the Orville and Star Trek here on the network. On the show, we take an in-depth look at each of these franchises and discover that both of them can coexist in today's fandom as they introduce us to fresh, new, and exciting stories, characters, galactic destinations, and so much more. Of course, I'm Kyle, sitting in the captain's chair for this week's episode, but I got a great crew with me. Back from vacation and special assignment, my co-founder, my brother from another mother, Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
Good to be back. I've missed you guys, and it was interesting to marathon 3 episodes of Star Trek Discovery as I had to take a Thanksgiving week vacation trip and kind of get caught up.
Well, we're going to discuss that in a little bit, but you know what? Unfortunately, our weapons master, Hayley Stoddard, is on a special assignment herself today. So, Amy Nelson, can you handle the weapons con? I mean, even with that extra Romulan ale you've got there?
Hey, I think I can, and I just might go full, what's it called? Not automatic. The other one.
I'm just trying to vision Amy with Romulan ale and her finger on the weapons button. It's going to get interesting quick.
Osira doesn't stand a chance. Let's just say that.
Pew, 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 pew.
So we are this week, of course, we've got Star Trek Discovery to discuss. We've got a few things in subspace signals, but before we get any of this started, let's open up some hailing frequencies. Mr. Reitzel, you're back from vacation, special assignment, but you didn't go to that retreat place that was in Lower Decks, did you?
Why? What did you hear? I'd be happy to let people know where they can find us. I could do that.
Yeah. Just a reminder: what happens on the lower deck stays on the lower deck.
Sort of. Yeah. Well, first of all, you can find the Fandom Podcast Network and the Union Federation all here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And first and foremost, please find the Fandom Podcast Network now on YouTube. Search for the Fandom Podcast Network. You can find all of our shows there. We've been uploading the audio podcast too, and we also have some exclusive programming. And we would love the extra support, if you were to subscribe and follow us there. And regarding our audio podcasts, you can find them on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. You can also stream the Fandom Podcast Network on that Podbean app. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms, which includes, of course, Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can mix and mingle with your fellow Union Federation podcast friends and family on our Facebook page group. Make sure you check out Union Federation. And you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Union Fed Podcast. And also check out our main Fandom Podcast Network Facebook page. You can also email us directly at theunionfederation@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom.
Awesome. And Amy, where can we find you on social media, and what else are you doing?
Well, I do a couple other podcasts, one about Next Generation called Galaxy Class, and I also host All Good Things, and they are over on the United Federation of Podcast Network. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, and you can find me right there in the Facebook group.
Great. And also, what I'd like to do, too, if you don't mind, is let the listeners know what topics you are covering currently on those other podcasts.
Okay, well, for All Good Things, we just did a deep dive on Far Beyond the Stars for Deep Space Nine. And then for Galaxy Class, we reviewed season 4 low-rated episodes and said the good things about them and why they shouldn't be rated so low.
Cool. See, that's why I wanted to ask you, because sometimes you can say what podcast that you're on, but when you kind of dive deep into a topic, you might strike a chord with some listeners that are going, maybe I should check her out then.
Yes, please do. We'd love to have you.
That's cool. That's cool. Also, Hayley, who is not here tonight, but will be back. You can find her on Twitter at Trekkie01D. Of course, there are two ways you can support the Fandom Podcast Network on the Union Federation Podcast. Please visit our TeePublic store. Search Fandom Podcast Network or Union Federation Podcast. You can find some great logos of all of our shows there, including Union Federation Podcast, and put them on a t-shirt or a hoodie. And any purchases that you make there help support us. And also, please leave us reviews. Please support the Fandom Podcast Network and Union Federation with reviews on your podcast platforms, which include, of course, Apple Podcast and iTunes. Please leave us a rated review. We love 5 stars, but of course, we love feedback in general. Kyle, back over to you.
So here we are. We got some Discovery to talk about, but first and foremost, Kevin, we need to do a little catch up with you on Discovery. You've now watched up through the most current episode, episode 8, The Sanctuary, which is the episode we're going to dive into shortly. But I wanted to get your thoughts on what you saw from the other 2 episodes of Discovery. We had in our if I can remember titles,
Scavengers and
Unification Part 3.
Yes.
So what did you think of those two episodes? Because especially Unification Part 3, there was a lot there to...
Yeah. Well, I've been probably the toughest on Discovery with us here in the Union Federation family. And Discovery has definitely gotten its fair share of critics, obviously, for the direction that it's taken and the choices made and so on and so forth. And going into Star Trek Discovery Season 3, it's Trek. I'm going to watch all of it no matter what, and I have been saying with Season 3, it's been the best thus far, in my opinion. It's starting to feel like the crew is being flushed out. The writers, I think, are recognizing this. It's becoming little less about the Burnham thing, more about everyone else, or at least getting them together to feel more like a crew. Going forward into the future was a big risk for a show like this, and I think in a way it's helping that because it's setting a new platform and new stuff to figure out, with the burn kind of being the MacGuffin here of figuring out, this season's trying to figure that, catastrophe that happened. And so I'll be honest with you, when I came back from vacation, knowing that I had to watch 3 episodes to be prepared for this podcast, notice how I said I had to? There was a little part of me that felt like this is going to feel like homework a little bit, but it's Star Trek. I'm going to be watching it for the first time. But I got to tell you, I dove in with Scavengers. I really enjoyed the character development in that, and to kind of see where they were going, and it had some great action scenes. Stamets is becoming, I'm going to be honest, a much more likable character in this season. What I should clarify, though, is that Stamets, I think, it's not that he's becoming a more likable person. He's evolving himself. And you can tell with the awesome acting by Anthony Rapp, is that his name, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
He is really kind of diving into this new, not version of himself, but just like anyone else that would kind of finally let other people influence him. And I love the whole thing with Adira and him that's happening here. And then we're getting some background, of course, with Book and all that kind of stuff. Unification 3. Okay, I'm going to be perfectly honest here. Unification 3, in my opinion, is the best Star Trek Discovery episode thus far. I will even go as far as to say, if you go top 10, top 20 best Star Trek episodes of all time, I'm going to put Unification 3 in there.
Wow.
Strong.
This was one of those, I don't want to call it... Okay, the episodes of Star Trek that we really like the best sometimes that are just people acting and character development. They're not going off on some other side adventure. They're not going on a location shoot. And also, too, it's the episode that's kind of defining the season, because this is where Burnham is trying to get to the bottom of this. Burnham's trying to get into the bottom of the burn. But then you get the throwback to Spock, and you're getting, this new. I'm sorry, what's the name of the new world that's not Vulcan anymore? Starts with the
Navarre.
Navarre. Yeah, Navarre. You're getting the background on this, and I got to tell you, it was emotionally charged, and I actually teared up a little bit watching this episode. It was that good, and the whole thing with the throwback to the Kawat Malat and her mom being a member of it, and the relationship. I just love the fact that not only did her mom mother, but her mom basically stripped her down, not literally, but stripped down the walls that she's been putting up and showing the vulnerability of this character in front of this, not only just her crew, but this intimidating, governing aspect of Navarre. Is that, am I saying it right?
Mm-hmm.
Navarre. Yeah. And trying to get their trust was just amazing, well-written drama. And this, when people say Discovery is not Star Trek, this is not the Star Trek I wanted, watch this freaking episode and tell me otherwise. It blew me away. I was watching this, I put down my McRib to watch this damn thing.
One of the big things that I know Amy and I came out of Unification 3 with was the kind of, in a way, humbling of Michael Burnham in this episode.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
And how big we thought that was. Amy, I know you. We were, all three of us, Hayley included, were all in very strong agreement how this was a changing of this episode changed the entirety of Discovery in a way.
But not just that, you get the whole command structure of Tilly being asked to become, the second in command here. Where way back in, what was it, season 1, there's some thread or something where she was, wanting to be a captain eventually or something like that, or wanting to be in a command position. And the fact that she has the support of her crew at the end, and when she talks to Stamets, it's just, those are just some beautiful character developing scenes. And that this is what I've been wanting from Discovery, is flushing out the supporting cast that builds up Burnham, and Burnham also building them up, and I'm not feeling the Burnham burnout, even though she had a magnificent monologue, more than one in this episode. And the camera kind of pushing back and looking at the reactions of not just the people from Navarre and the little tension between them, but also the crew, and just being put out on a ledge for everyone to see. And it was a beautiful episode. It really surprised me. So.
Like I said, I know, Amy, you felt very similar in that aspect of just how much it changed the show. So it's interesting to get Kevin's perspective on this.
Yes, it is.
It surprised me. I'll be completely honest with you. I was not expecting that. And, Burnham's character is being fleshed out more. She's not this Vulcan robot, where she, you seem like for the first 2 seasons, you only saw her Vulcan, repressed side. Now you're starting to see her humanity as well. And I think that's important for us to relate to the character more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's going to get Kevin caught up on Discovery. So let's all dive into the next episode of Discovery, which is season 3, episode 8, The Sanctuary. And there's one good place to do that, and that is in the Officers' Lounge. So we open up with this season 3, episode 8, The Sanctuary, in the sickbay, as Philippa Georgiou tells Dr. Hugh Colbert that in the Terran Empire, the Emperor's physicians were buried when the Sovereign died to inspire loyalty. I don't want to be a doctor in the Terran Empire. Just saying. And as they're investing basically the blackouts Georgiou has been having, she rebuffs all of Colbert's questions, but he warns her that the onset of brain dysfunction will eventually leave her mad. Georgiou relents, and Colbert scans her in the presence of Commander Michael Burnham. Her heart rate is elevated, though, because Georgiou is apparently filled with rage. As we move on into a quarter, we see Burnham running into Cleveland Booker. She does that often. Who says he must return to his home planet. guys, help me with pronunciation here.
Quajon?
Quajon.
Yeah. His brother Kaim passed along a request via the courier network. The planet is threatened by Osira and the Emerald Chain, with whom Kyram has been dealing for 15 years without previously asking for Booker's help. Booker asks Burnham to accompany him, but she notes the planet is a 2-week journey at warp and that a transwarp tunnel would more than likely not kill them. They will need help, she says. So they go to Admiral Charles Vance. Booker explains the burn caused damage to subspace that shifted Queljan's moon's orbit, which in turn caused tidal changes, sea locusts coming to eat the harvest, leaving millions to starve. To counteract that, they entered a deal with the Emerald Chain to get a repellent for these sea locusts, but the price was they had to hand over their transworms in exchange. Booker does not know why Osira has returned. Vance is unsurprised by all of this and explains that the chain often contacts pre-warp civilizations in distress. Something is done to at least 50 other star systems being tracked by Starfleet. Such civilians typically collapse. Vance says he's unwilling to risk sending Discovery, but Saru steps in. Saru's been on the ball this season, suggesting travel to the planet with the legal status of observers. The presence of the Federation's watchful eye might temper Osira. Vance consents, but tells Saru to take a defensive posture and jump away if there is any danger. We go then to the ruins of Hunan, or the salvage factory, where we see when you screw up, Osira doesn't like you too much, even if you are family, because Talor pays the ultimate price for all his mistakes in the episode of Scavengers. Guys, Discovery's been really good at destroying everything against the wall right out of the gate, and this episode is no different. I mean, we're dealing with Giorgio. We're dealing now. We're going to go to Book's home planet. We're dealing with the chain. We're dealing with Starfleet. So much in there. What grabbed you guys? Amy, I want to start with you on this.
So this episode has got me seriously confused, and I'm not quite sure exactly when to bring it up.
Just bring it up.
Yes.
We fly by the seat of our pants around here.
So, Quajon, they have already been there before. Episode 1, That Hope Is You. They returned the transworm to the sanctuary in time for breeding season.
I think it was a different...
Is that the same? Because they're calling it the sanctuary, and it had the shield so that they could be hidden. And so I'm thinking, all right, well, that's pretty recent. And then now we're learning that the planet is under Emerald Chain, that they gave up their transworms. I'm like, no, Book and Burnham just returned one of those to the sanctuary. So I'm all confused. And then they're saying that the planet has been under Osira's control for like 100 years, a century. And I'm like, no, this isn't making sense. So can you help me out?
Well, I think it was a different planet in the first episode of this season. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch.
Yeah, I was getting that. I was getting that sense too, that transwarp worms were something that were not exclusive to a particular planet, and obviously they have this link to be able to communicate with them. But I could be wrong. But that was the impression that I was under. When I watched this episode, I didn't even remember that, so I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, I'm looking on Memory Alpha. It's everyone's best friend. Says that the transworm is indigenous to Quajon.
Well, it's indigenous to Quajon, but they're around the galaxy.
Yeah, but that's where he was transporting the worm, right? And then So was it? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, well, we got to investigate that more. So besides that, Amy, was there anything else that grabbed you besides your wondrous geographical curiosity?
Okay, I did continue reading more. Book and Burnham delivered the transworm to Sanctuary 4. Which is different. Okay, so now that can... Okay, thank you. I am still in love with Admiral Vance. I think he's doing such a wonderful job of walking and staying the course, but yet allowing Discovery. And I think Saru is doing great of saying, well, we can go let's go check it out. Like Saru's stepping up. Vance is allowing them and understanding like Burnham's place in the whole scheme of things. From last week's episode of having her represent Starfleet to now, I just think I just really am in love with Admiral Vance. He's doing a great job. And Giorgio, I'm seriously curious about.
Yeah, there's a lot.
We're
of
starting to
there.
care for Giorgio a little more.
Oh, I still don't care about her.
No, you don't? Okay.
Yeah.
No, Kevin. We care because she's fun.
Yeah, she is fun, and I like how matter of fact she is. So. But what's funny is that she reminds me of some people I've worked with, where depending on where they're from, they'll kind of be harsh on you to kind of test your fortitude and to see if you're worth being challenged. And she gains her respect towards you, and if you can throw it back in her face just as good, you know what I mean? And I've dealt with people like that before. Specifically, a certain friend of mine who then became kind of a father figure to me, that was from Jersey, and had to kind of learn that kind of dry sarcasm. And once I started to learn it and started to respect it and throw it back, then there was a mutual respect there. So that's the kind of thing I get from her, and I'm really enjoying that, actually. But I want to ask you something, Kyle. The character, of course, that we get, Osira here, played by Janet Kidder. I love her introduction in this with the finger, like, cool ring, and, basically feeding her underling to these transforms because he failed her and lost the forgetting the guy's name, the Andorian who's lost his antennas. But there's a lot of stuff she's been in, and so I throw this back at you, Kyle. She was in like 7 episodes in 2015 Arrow. Did you recognize her at all?
I did recognize her, and I was trying to place her. I remember. I think I can't remember what character she played in Arrow.
Ruve Adams in Arrow.
Yeah, I think I remember that character. It's been a while. It's been a few years since.
And I didn't watch Continuum. She was part of Continuum, but I really liked her in this. I thought she was a really good villain.
I would hope you would like her as an actress, considering who her aunt is.
Who's that?
Margot Kidder.
Oh, good lineage. I like that.
Yeah, so there's some lineage in that. So one of the things I really liked in this, and I think it's something that runs through the entire episode, how Saru is bringing classic Starfleet ideals from their time to Starfleet now that they maybe aren't recognizing or have forgot about. And you even see that here when he brings up the idea of just going as the legal status of observers.
Right.
So he's using some great things to keep Starfleet evolving, and yet still and being able to get information about the current time too.
The one thing I'm glad you brought up Saru, and I wanted to just throw this back at you guys. When I was marathoning these last 3 episodes back to back to back, Doug Jones is doing a fantastic job of Saru taking command. Finally, we're getting the captain that he deserves to be. But the way that he is saying the words on the script and taking pauses, and the way that he's putting the dialogue out there, he really is becoming a master of diplomacy and knowing how to approach each character or each person in charge in a certain way. And I really noticed that when he was talking in Unification 3 with the Vulcan, is it Terra? Mm-hmm. And how he kind of started a really cool friendship with her. But he knows how to really kind of step in when maybe someone says something awkward or whatever, and really kind of put a quick fire out. And he's just phenomenal in the role, and he's really finding that character.
Yeah, no, he really is. He's done a fantastic job with that so far. But let's continue on with the episode as well, because we see some more very fun things with Saru coming up, and it actually opens with Act 1. I love this scene, guys, where you have Saru and Tilly walking down, discussing some command things, but the most important thing is Saru's trying to find his quote-unquote punch-it line.
No, I like how he says, like, and what about that other thing we were talking about?
Yeah.
And this is something that reminds me of a first officer and a captain's kind of side conversations they don't share with anyone else, you know?
Yeah.
Very, very like Riker and Picard, or, you know, Cisco and, I'm sorry, drawing blank now, but what's her name?
Kira.
Kira, thank you. Just little things like that they only talk about, don't share with the crew, so yeah.
Yeah. No, it was very fun. Over in engineering, Paul Stamets and Adria Tall briefs through until on their analysis of the SB-19 data and the information from the black boxes gathered by Burnham. The data shows that the burn started in the Verbin Nebula, which has intense radiation and unstable electromagnetic fields. They have also discovered a deliberate audio signal coming from the center of the nebula. The signal has been distorted by magnetic interference, but when played aloud, Tilly recognized it as the song hummed by the Barzan family aboard the USS T-Cove. Adria also reveals that Gray Tall used to play this tune on his cello because Senatol's parents had sung it as a lullaby when he was a boy. They modify the signal to filter out the distortion and are surprised to hear a Federation distress signal. Adira will write an algorithm to determine whether it includes an encoded message or not. Dressed in civilian clothes, Burnham and Booker head to the bridge. Booker reveals that Chimerian is not his biological brother, but they use the term because it is something we said we felt. Also on the bridge, Owosakun notes that Detmer has modified the station's interface from the programmable matter version of the Starfleet upgrade. Detmer says she needs a failsafe. With Discovery ready to jump through, orders the crew to execute, leaving the bridge officers underwhelmed. Above Quajon, Discovery receives no response from its hails as Booker observes nervously. Owosakun reports that a cruiser-class ship will arrive in 30 minutes, and Booker says it's likely Osira aboard the Viridian. Saru sends Booker and Burnham to the surface, instructing Burnham to figure out if Discovery can be of service, but to return to the ship at the first sign of trouble. Meanwhile, in sickbay, Giorgio complains about having to dress in a tight white outfit that makes her look like a human spermatozoa?
Yeah.
But Dr. Pollard explains that it is made of a hyperconductive material that interacts with electromagnetic gel for an extensive medical scan. Pollard puts Giorgio to sleep and begins the scan. In Saru's ready room,
to count back 10 to 1.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I love that scene.
Yeah. In the Saru's ready room, Rin bursts in angrily demanding an audience, but Tilly confidently cascades him. Great moment there. The still irritated Rin thanks him for healing him, but he says the Federation assistance always comes with strings. He asks to beam down to Quajon, but with Booker, but Saru says he can. Saru says he can if Quajon accepts him, but warns that Osira will arrive in 15 minutes and most likely would recapture him. Just then, Booker and Burnham enter Quajon's defended areas, and Discovery loses track of their signal. In a forested area on the planet, Burnham notes that her tricorder recordings are scrambled, and Booker welcomes her to the sanctuary. Around them float the blue sea locusts. Booker notes that their presence is so far inland means that the planet has not received any repellent for weeks. Book uses his empathic abilities to part the locusts so they can pass, telling Burnham that he cannot force them aside and instead can only ask. Quajon scientists have long sought a way to ask the locusts back to sea, but to no avail. The two are suddenly surrounded by armed Quajon themselves. The leader complains that Booker, whom he calls Terex, brought the Federation with him. The two verbally spar, and Booker reveals the man is his brother, Kahim. Lots of fun stuff here, too, guys. Lots of little things that they did here. I loved everything they did in engineering with Stamets and Adrian and Tall, especially bringing up the music, which looks like it's definitely been a big key thing all the way, Amy.
Yeah, I first want to comment about the punch it, execute, engage. I mean, it was going through everyone's mind. I really enjoy this type of commentary and just lightness, and you're laughing at yourself. Like, I love that when series does that. SG-1, they were always laughing at themselves. And this is just one cute little way that we all know we want Saru to have his own, punch it, hit it. Wow, that was Pikes. And so I really like how the writers are adding this. It makes it more enjoyable. It really, really does. I really like, yes, Giorgio, always with a quick comeback. And interesting that the suit helps the scan. So again, just the smallest things of recognizing technology and where we could go. Like, I think it was so cool to see all of that and then see the special effects that they did to sort of see her veins and stuff like that. I mean, that whole thing I just think is pretty awesome. I just wanted to say that. And Rin and Tilly, yep, comes walking in. I want to talk to the captain. No. Step back, try it again, because this deserves some respect. So let's start again. Love that. And again, Tilly's coming into her own, and I like seeing the growth in it.
Yeah, no, it very, very much so. Kevin, a lot of interesting little things that they've picked up that have been kind of going through the season. You have the little scene where you see Detmer talking about wanting to have a fail-safe, still kind of dealing with her own fears. And I really love getting to learn more about Book in this episode so far. Seeing his home planet, seeing his empathic abilities, and just kind of a little bit more about his backstory.
Yeah, and you obviously have the relationship between Burnham and Book, which is developing, and that's something that's nice to see as well. We like to see relationships and romantic relationships. We really haven't had a whole lot of that in Discovery, and in other Star Trek TV series, we've had romantic side stories, which I think is great for the main characters to explore and be part of. And it's something that we follow along and root for. And I'm actually rooting for this relationship and enjoying it. I am a little confused. I don't remember if I've missed something regarding this music algorithm thing and why this is important. I don't remember.
It's just that it's appeared now in several different places that
in different
really have
quadrants.
no connection.
Okay, yeah. So it's another MacGuffin thingy that they're trying to figure out. Then okay, all right. Yeah. Well, this is cool because it gives the character of Adira and it gives them a chance to showcase musical ability and to bring music into Star Trek. We like it when we see Star Trek characters play music together. It's always been a thing, that was really cultivated with Next Generation, I would say, and then kind of continued on here and there. And I like seeing the connection with Adira and Stamets on this as well. So, but I love location shooting as well. I was discussing that with Amy before we got on recording regarding similar topics. But I like what they're doing here with Book's planet and the introduction of his brother, and not necessarily blood brother, but someone that he definitely cares about and has a history with.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to see, and it's something that I know I'm looking forward to getting more into. But Miss Nelson, if you would be so kind, would you care to give your lovely voice to Act 2 of this episode?
Yes. While still undergoing the scan, the sweat-dampened but semi-conscious Georgiou
in graphic, yeah.
Her readings peak, and Culber warns that she is having another episode. The scan is only 83% complete, but Pollard warns she could have a cerebral hemorrhage and the scan should be aborted. Culber insists, saying they cannot otherwise learn what is wrong with Georgiou. The disturbed doctors watch in shock as Georgiou's face distorts briefly but bizarrely. Georgiou has another flashback to her discovery of the bloody sand in the Terran universe and awakens. She leaves angrily, having stolen one of the electrodes used for the scan. On Quajon, Booker criticizes the character of Kahim and their family for selling transworms to the chain. Kahim reveals Osira lured Booker to Quajon in order to recover Rin. The Quajon desperately need the repellent, but Booker refuses to return Rin to slavery. The Viridian arrives and scans Discovery. Reese suggests going to Yellow Alert, but Saru says diplomatic protocol cautions against any action that could be misinterpreted as provocation. Saru says Discovery is an observational presence there at the request of the Quajon. Osira says they are harboring a wanted criminal, Rin, though Saru says he is unaware of Rin being wanted by any authority recognized by the Federation. Unbowed, Osira tells Saru to send Rin to her ship, but Saru resists. As he drinks Quajon whiskey, Kahim talks to a holographic projection of Osira, who notes that the sanctuary has a strong defense system. He insists he brought Booker to the planet as Osira wanted, but she says she needs to capture Booker and burn him to leverage. He refuses to turn off the defense system and hand them over, so Osira instead threatens to allow the locusts to eat Quajon's harvest, noting he has a young son who could starve. When he does not give in, the Viridian opens fires on the planet, threatening to burn 10 hecapates of forest for every minute he delays. With the defense system holding for now, Booker and Burnham flee.
Can we just say 10 acres? Will that work? I don't know.
I don't know what the measurement trans is. Interesting stuff with Giorgio, Kevin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're fleshing something out there. And I was talking with Amy beforehand, wondering if we're going to find a way to where, there's rumors of a Section 31 show with her starring in it, or whether they're going to find a way to get that tied into this century, or if they're going to send her back and stuff like that. But I think that we're also going to get some background on the Empire and what happened to her and maybe what traumatized her, so that's definitely cool. I'm digging what's happening with Quajon and this whole chain, the Emerald Chain. I liked how it was alluded to earlier that they have this powerful ship that is basically bombarding the planet's surface here, and that they are smart by smart as in if you want to if you want to hold onto power and systems, is that you look for underdeveloped people that don't have the technology you do to keep them under your thumb, and whether you use them as slavery or whatever, that they've been doing this, and that's one way they've been expanding their empire. And this whole Viridian, or I'm sorry, what was it called? The Emerald Chain is basically, like a crime syndicate to a certain degree, it seems like, But I kind of liked how Saru kind of called her out, saying that sounds like slavery. So yeah.
I really like what they did with Osira in this, and I'm liking how they're setting her up for this, Amy, because I have a feeling that Osira's going to be a character that might roll into the next season as well.
Might. I hadn't actually thought of that. It was interesting, though, to see Osira, leveraging Kahim's own child against him. Like, that's how low she's willing to go. And Kahim seems to be okay with bringing Booker here, but not okay turning him in. I'm like, he's got some interesting lines that he has just arbitrarily said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Well, you brought him here as bait because you plan to have Osira. So I was really saddened, and especially seeing their relationship. I mean, obviously it's deteriorated because Booker's like, what are you doing? Where's your principles? Where's, well, you're being all righteous. Well, someone's got to, because you aren't. You're selling the transworms. What's going on? So I just found it interesting that his character, Kahim, was like, yeah, it's okay. He's, even though he's my brother, I'm going to bring him here for Osira. It's fishy to me. That was one thing I didn't like about it.
Yeah, no, it just seemed like it was a little bit all over the place there, but I find it interesting seeing the Quajon society and how it works, and it's interesting to me, like Kevin brought up, to see this Emerald Chain and how it's affected the galaxies and the different quadrants and just how far spread they actually are and the kind of power they have. And I think it shows that we're much more of a Wild West version of Star Trek than we may have ever have been in a long, long time. So, well, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But Kevin, would you be so kind to read Act 3 for us?
Do I have a lovely voice?
Oh, the best, man.
Okay, cool. That's what I want to say.
Oh, you might not be a Davis Grayson. That's all I'm going to say, though.
This is very true. I don't have those smooth, silky tones of the Grayson.
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right, Act 3. On Discovery, the crew question why Osira wants Rin badly enough to carpet bomb Quajon, but he refuses to say. Saru orders weapons brought online, saying they must prevent Osira from committing atrocities. At a corridor computer terminal, Georgiou hacks into the electrode, but is distracted when Discovery goes to red alert, concerned about Burnham. She's intercepted by two guards and Culber, who reveal he knows she was going to help Burnham, but that her condition makes her a liability. She tells Culber the scans show she is dying, but he says her situation is not that cut and dry. On the surface, Burnham and Booker run into the forest as weapons fire begins to penetrate the Sanctuary's defense system, though they are still unable to contact Discovery. Reese cannot determine if the Viridian shields have any weakness, but Rin volunteers to show them, citing his experiences on the salvage duty. Nilsson warns that Discovery attacking Osira will draw retribution from the chain against the whole Federation. However, Tilly suggests firing on her from a non-Federation ship, Booker ship, piloted by a, quote, Starfleet pilot who will be disciplined severely for disobeying orders and for going rogue. Detmer shares a knowing look with Saru. Detmer and Rin leave in the shuttle bay in Booker's ship. He directs her to fire where the Viridian's gunwale meets the aft nacelles. Technobabble. Amid intense fire, Detmer says she cannot determine from sensors whether she hit her target, but Rin assures her she has weakened Osira's shields and must continue the attack. Rin is alarmed when Grudge jumps onto his lap, but Detmer reassures him the cat is harmless. That was a great scene. From the surface, Viridian is close enough that Booker can identify his ship attacking with a naked eye. They are surrounded by Kahim's guards, but all are knocked to the ground by a nearby explosion, and Booker and Burnham fight them off. Booker's ship's shields are down to 10%, prompting Rin to suggest retreat. But Detmer says they must continue until Burnham is clear. Rin tells her that he fears being vaporized by Osira, but she tells him that, quote, if you face something, you can beat it. Detmer switches to full manual control. On the planet, Kahim attacks Booker, who says he must have known all along that Osira would consider kidnapping him for leverage. He gives a weapon to Kahim and dares him to hand him over.
Things getting intense and interesting. Couple different angles to go here, Amy. It's getting the Georgiou stuff is getting is becoming quite the intriguing mystery. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely, and I watched that scene where she was seeing San and trying to figure out. Okay, we obviously the Terran badge or insignia was there, so we definitely know that, and we know that this person was in some kind of gray suit. I wouldn't say armor, but some kind of suit. I'm going to assume one of her followers, because she definitely has remorse. I don't know if she was the reason that this person is dead, or if she came to them on their deathbed. I'm very, very curious. I'm very piqued, and they're doing a good job at getting me hooked into this next little piece of the story. I'm almost more curious about that than the burn. Really, to me, it's that interesting. I, of course, loved Grudge And Rin's reaction, and Grudge is a huge cat, and so to have this thing jump up on you, and he's like, "What's a cat? Oh, is it a pet?" And just I loved that, making it lighter, not so intense, but it was so inspiring to have Detmer sort of talk with Rin and get him, I just need you to have courage for a couple more minutes. And I thought that was so powerful. Like, just gather your strength. I'm here with you. You're with me. We're doing this together, And then she says, as you put in the quotes, if you face something, you can beat it, referring back to her issues with coming into the future and stuff like that. So I thought that was really nice to have Detmer showing strength when before she was weakened.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That was very good. One of the other things too was props to Saru for coming up, or Tilly, I should say, for coming up with an amazing idea on how to deal with the Viridian. Because some original thinking there for our new first officer, Mr. Reitzel.
Yeah, a nice, cool command decision there, and I thought that was a very cool thing. It's funny though. I was like, when they first brought up the question, I'm like, wait, what about Bookship? And then she mentioned that, and then I love what was really cool about this is that you see Detmer's character shine, and this is one of those characters that I've been wanting to get more exposure because especially that one scene with that horrible dinner, and she just went off on Stamets, and stuff like that. I've been rooting for this character for a while. I've been wanting to learn more about her, because she was experiencing some PSD or PTSD, basically, a version of that anyway, and she really shined in this act and shown that she is a legendary pilot and that, she could take any ship and just be badass. And I loved that. And I love that we're getting these wonderful characters that are, they're still considered supporting cast, but I love the fact they're being thrown into shine in moments like this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's one of the things that we've talked about. Discovery really giving everybody a chance to shine this season. Booker's got some amazing eyesight, by the way, that he can recognize his ship from planet side.
I mean, if the way the camera was shooting it, and maybe it makes a certain sound, and your ship and stuff like that, but he obviously has some. Abilities outside of a regular human. So, yeah.
Well, I think his ship looks differently enough from Discovery that those are really the only two ships out there, either Discovery or his ship. So,
yeah.
And one thing I did want to mention, just because I don't want to forget it later, but as we were discussing this act, I just got a Twitter notification on my phone that Mary Wiseman, who plays Tilly, retweeted actor Noah Averback-Katz, who plays is it Reese? Rin. Rin.
The Andorian.
Yes, the Andorian, and he posted some. He obviously had been holding on to these pictures until he could actually put them out there. And his tweet says, whenever Mary Wiseman and I were on set together, I would try to get some nice photos of us together in costume. Here are some of the, quote, better ones. And if you look at this tweet, it's very funny. There's 4 pictures of Mary Wiseman doing her best to not give, the best pictures that you could probably get. She's, throwing the bird up. She's licking his nose. It's very, very funny. You can tell that they are having this crew is having a blast behind the scenes.
That's always good to hear. So, well, let's dive into the final act here on this episode, Act 4. Kaim is unable to betray his brother. They watch from the surface as Detmer is able to significantly damage the Viridian. Osira promises retaliation for their actions and warps away. On the surface, Kaim says they will starve without the repellent. There are too many locusts for Booker and Kaim to move them out to sea, but Burnham has an idea. She returns to Discovery and prepares to amplify the electromagnetic connections between the locusts so that the brothers can use their empathic powers. Booker and Kaim begin chanting together as their foreheads glow. The surrounding locust swarm, and Bryce amplifies the message. The locusts begin moving back out to sea, saving the Quajan harvest and preventing mass starvation. In the mess hall, Detmer gushes about her piloting adventures to Waskun, Nielsen, Rice, and Bryce. Rin sits alone nearby where Tilly joins him. He warns that Osira will return with a vengeance and says he was raised to believe that the Federation was deceitful. He also warns that Osira wants him so badly because he knows a secret. That Osira and the Chain are running out of dilithium. Burnham and Booker prepare to repair his ship, which was hit by 8 photon torpedoes during the battle. She asks if he meant it when he said he understood their mission. Booker replies that Discovery saved them from a century-long problem and that he wants to similarly help more worlds. She says he will have to clarify his intentions with Saru and says she likes seeing Quajan. Booker replies that he liked being there with her. So, well, some interesting things, some fun little moments here, too. When you take your little nephew to go peel things off of Linus.
I want to do that. That was a cute scene. But I got to tell you, I loved Detmer recounting her awesome experience driving, Booker's ship and kicking some ass, and then that we see Rin kind of sitting over there in the corner. That conversation between Rin and Tilly says, "Don't play the sad Andorian role," and there's that cute little exchange there. And a little bit off topic, but I was trying to figure out why Mary Weissman was having so much fun with these pictures behind the scene with Noah Averback Katz. Because he's been married to Mary Weissman since February of 2019. Mm-hmm. That is why they are so comfortable together. And also, too, real quick, Noah has pinned on his tweet, he's at N_A_K. He has been a lifelong Star Trek fan, and he pinned a wonderful tweet of a video of all these old pictures of him being at conventions, getting pictures taken with Star Trek stars, and so this is a dream come true for him, so I had to throw that out there. I just got to tell you, though, seeing the crew come together on things like this, also having this obviously as the Emerald Chain now becoming the new big baddie, and, I'm just curious to see where this goes, and I really did enjoy this episode, specifically this last act here with the character development.
No, I think there's a lot of interesting things in here. What stood out for you, Amy?
Again, couple of things. I'm just pointing them out. I still enjoyed the episode, but I was very underwhelmed with what Rin had to say, the big secret that they're running out of dilithium. Everyone's running out of dilithium. Why is this the big secret? Why can they turn that to an advantage? Like, no one has dilithium.
Well,
and they're...
Can I jump in there real quick? Because I was wondering about that myself, and I rewatched the end of this thing, and I get the feeling that the Emerald Chain kind of reminds me of the villains in Mad Max films that have control of a limited amount of, in Mad Max world, gasoline. Mm-hmm. And when you can travel and cover ground, you have power. So that's the feeling that I get, that they have a certain amount of it, and it's what allows them to keep their power, because then they can travel and then engulf other small world communities and enslave them. So that was the impression that I got from that conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes a little more sense. I mean, I know it, scarcity and supply and demand, mm-hmm. and with it running out even more, then they're only adds power to them until it's gone. So I guess, thank you. This is why we podcast, because I learn things. And then I also didn't understand Quajon scientists not being able to come up with a pesticide. That's all that Osira was offering them, was a pesticide. Why couldn't their scientists figure it out or break down and say, well, what is this chemical? And can we find other ways to get it? Why do we have to rely on Osira? Huh. So I was a little underwhelmed by that. Again, just sort of, but the big picture, Osira has a product. She's, enslaving. I get it. I just
did it kind of remind you a little bit of that Next Gen episode where that one culture had the drug, and the other one needed it? That came up for me just a little bit. Like they couldn't figure it out, or the chain had this special whatever it was deterrent, but they're not sharing them how they produce it. But you're wondering, with all of those telepathic abilities and smart people, you're wondering why can't they figure something out? So
right, exactly. And if it's been going on for 100 years, a century, as they said. So again, just a little underwhelmed. And then Viridian, isn't that the people whose face falls apart in Voyager?
No,
or is that Enterprise?
Vidians. Those are the Vidians. But Viridian is the Viridian 3 in Star Trek Next Generation with Soren. So I think there's a little throwback to that.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, very good.
Yeah, the Vidians were the weird, Voyager villains. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Kevin just put up the episode trivia for us there.
Yeah. And I really liked seeing the transformation both in Booker and with Reese, their turning and them seeing Starfleet for what Discovery knows Starfleet is. They are being introduced to what the Federation could be, to how awesome Starfleet is, and with the type of person that Booker is, and same with Rin. Like, they could join and be productive and help the cause. And so I'm wondering, are those two going to join Starfleet? And what is the protocol? How do we, start building Starfleet? I can see those two would be the first signing up.
And that planet, maybe in the tradition of the Federation, joining this new Federation as allies.
Yeah.
No, one of the things, too, that was found interesting is because we talked about a little bit this after last week's episode, Amy, is Burnham going to leave Discovery? But I think they're giving us a twist in the aspect of, is Book joining Discovery?
Right.
So I think that's an interesting thing as well, because that's a distinct possibility. I also do think that one of the more interesting things is that with the Starfleet and way Starfleet is being lined up, and they keep talking about things with Starfleet have a price, or you can't trust Starfleet and stuff like this. Now with Discovery kind of being the way they are we going to lead to some kind of collision course between Vance and Saru just because of ideological differences of what Starfleet should be? Is that coming somewhere down the line?
Vance is not a Badmiral.
I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying a clash over ideological differences.
Yeah, but I think he is also seeing the grander and what Discovery crew is bringing, this fresh life, blood, hope to Starfleet, that he's going to encourage that. I see him as being very instrumental, yes, very administrative, but very supportive of the rebuild. Kevin?
Okay, I got something to say about this. I'm not suggesting he's going to be a Badmiral, but there is something going on in the Federation that is keeping them in their bubble, and they seem to be happy to be in the bubble. There's just something there that bothers me, because it feels like even though Vance seems to be helping, why haven't they themselves done more to try to fix this and work on these relationships and expand? I mean, obviously they've thrown in the travel disabilities and stuff like this, and this is the reason why we can't cover all this ground, and we can only communicate thus far. I get the feeling this is going to be something that's going to come up later, where there's always something in Starfleet that's holding something down for a particular nefarious reason. And whether it's Vance being involved or his superiors or something going on, there's something there. And that's how I feel.
No, I think there's something to that. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out over the remaining episodes of this season and possibly into next. We still don't know what's coming up for next season of Discovery, which makes this even more interesting with what's going on now. Because it feels like they're doing a lot of world building right now for what could be in the future of Discovery as well. So, very excited about that.
Can I ask you guys a question? After watching this episode and the things that's going on with Giorgio, do you guys think that we're going to get, when this series wraps up or whatever, do you think that they're going to stay there? Or because of that one short trek with Discovery, the ship itself being on by itself, do you think they're going to find a way back to their regular time and then knowing what they know, that they can kind of guide the Federation into the non-burn timeline?
We actually talked about this some while you were away, Kevin, and the thought process is they're there. They can't go back because of the spear data. So they are there.
The what data?
From season 2, that was the reason they went. They made the
Discovery can't go back because it has the sphere data, and then control.
The ship can't go back,
right?
But the crew, in a Star Trek-y way, go back.
Well, and that's one of the possibilities, like we talked about with Giorgio, or even they've been hinting at maybe some kind of Picard Discovery connection or something like that. So it's hard to say. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think there's going to be a lot to be revealed in the next few episodes, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So, but with that, what we are going to do is take a quick break to tell you what else is going on around the Fandom Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Bloody Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. End Zone, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
And we're back. We hope you're enjoying everything we do around here as we try to give you better podcasts to feed your ears. But as always here on the Union Federation, we have the communication array open and we're always exploring subspace signals. So again, it's because of galactic COVID interference and stuff, there's been a lack of signals out there, but one very positive one that hit yesterday as it started popping up all over Twitter with different pictures and everything like that. Kevin, Amy, the Orville has restarted production on season 3. It's official. We saw the placard. We are in full gear.
They call them the clappers, whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The scene clappers.
Yeah. The Orville shut down on its third season last March when all of Hollywood went on lockdown. News of the Orville's return to production today came from the official social media accounts showing a clapperboard for the first new scene. For the record, it was scene V24 and is being directed by the Orville star and showrunner Seth MacFarlane. He had executive producer John Cesar and are sharing directing duties for the entire third season. I'm excited, guys. We're just one more step closer to new adventures on the Orville.
And props to directing and acting. Usually, and we know TNG actors did this all the time, where they were directing and also being in the episode. But generally, if Patrick Stewart is directing, he's going to be directing an episode with usually that he's not a large character in that episode. And Seth MacFarlane, he's the main character. It's going to be interesting, and I'm pretty excited to see, how he's managing both of it. I know a lot of actors do it. I just am so impressed with the creativity and that ability to do so many things, have your hands in, so many baskets. So.
Yeah. So, Kevin, I know you're excited. Orville. Any Orville news for you is like candy these days.
Yeah, I'll be patient. I'll wait. And what I thought was interesting here was that so as of recording, this is December 7th of this episode of Union Federation. Southern California went on a 3-week COVID basically stay-at-home order. And so that affects certain businesses, again, that have to close if they're not essential, blah, blah, blah. But what's interesting is that in this section of the article says the Orville senior editor and co-producer Tom Castantino also shared an image from Fox. In this image, you can see the crew members are wearing PPE as the show is being produced. So there's a great behind-the-scenes shot of them all wearing masks and these face shields while they're filming this one particular scene, which is cool. But it says how even though Los Angeles is under new lockdown as of this week, and that's referring to this, mandate that the California governor put down, it says that film and television production adhering to restart protocols are exempt from this order. So they can still continue doing this as long as they stick to the COVID protocol. So this is very interesting. I like this. And it's a really cool, I love seeing the behind the scenes here. And you see all the crew members in this one black and white shot wearing their, doing their due diligence and stuff like that. It also says the work on season 3 originally began in October of 2019. They were a bit less than halfway through filming when they shut down in March of 2020, as they expect the season will take 5 or 6 more months to complete. In addition to filming on the Fox lot, the Orville is planning to do more location shooting in Southern California, which I like. And this is, of course, going to Hulu, they say. Episodes will stream weekly, and as of now, there's no start date to the new season, but they hope the season 3 will debut before the end of 2021.
Fingers crossed, that's all I've got to say. But speaking of new things, we did get a preview on the Ready Room for the upcoming episode of Star Trek Discovery Terra Firma. And we don't try to go into too many spoilers or anything like that, but it looks like we're going to get a deep dive into what's going on with Giorgio in this next 2 parts, because it's going to be a 2-part episode, Terra Firma 1, Terra Firma 2, including possibly some time. You were talking about, Kevin, some time travel. We might have some in this, or at least some universal travel. So lots of little things opening up here thanks to the Ready Room,
I'm
Kevin.
just glad we're going to get David Cronenberg back, who is one of those characters, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, that challenged Giorgio, and that she liked that and kind of warmed up to him a little bit. But there's a lot to his character that we're going to see and maybe find out about that he's kind of, I think he's pulling some strings too. He's very Section 31-ish, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, oh, very, very much. Very much so. Amy, I know you have thoughts because I know you watched the Ready Room.
I did, and it was really interesting to it was Blue Del Barrio and the Gray.
Ian Alexander.
Yes, Ian Alexander were on. And it was interesting because they were talking about them learning or to be able to play the cello. And Ian Alexander actually said that he's interested in actually taking lessons, that he really enjoyed just that quick tutelage. And I thought, well, that is pretty darn cool. Blue said that the cello just wasn't their thing. It just wasn't their thing. And yeah, so I'm really enjoying the Ready Room and seeing what did you say his name was? David Cronenberg, famous director.
Cronenberg. Yeah.
Yep. He's got his fingers in something. He knows something, and he's, I think, duplicitous like Giorgio. So I'm very looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to what they're gonna reveal. Guys, before we wrap up this week's mission, any final thoughts on the episode or anything we've discussed this evening, Kevin?
I'm curious to see where this show's gonna go, and I'm enjoying it thus far. It surprised me.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I know we've had several conversations about that off mic, but I'm glad that they are. I don't want to say turning you around, but they definitely have your interest.
That Unification III episode reminded me a lot of that episode 3 of season 1 of the Orville. Where the one with the baby and stuff like that. It was a great character, awesomely written, and that you can write a great episode that's not a bottle episode, but one that basically is more about character development, characters talking with each other, great drama, and we got a few of those great scenes in this latest episode as well.
Yeah, we did. Miss Nelson, any final thoughts before we get on out of here?
I think this episode, just compared with others from season 3, is probably on the bottom, because I have just so in love. And I had a couple questions, as you heard me ask you. But I am absolutely loving season 3. I like that and I've said this before, that there's beginning, middle, and ends. It's episodic, but yet still continuing the story. I'm almost wondering if in this episode we're biting off too much, because I'm thinking we have how many more episodes left, and we have to sort of tie things up. I need some kind of answer.
Yeah, we only got, I think, 5 episodes left.
Exactly. And so they're still sort of introducing, now we're really getting Giorgio. We've got Rin, and we've met Osira. Like, we're still pulling. And I'm like, okay, I've got the threads. Now let's see if I can weave something beautiful with it. So I am looking forward to see how they tie things up.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting, and we're going to have it all for you here on the Union Federation. Hopefully next week, weapon specialist Miss Stoddard will be back. Amy, I commend you on only blowing up a few rogue asteroids here and there during the episode, and actually not releasing any of the quantum torpedoes. I'm quite impressed by your restraint, because I know Kevin and I would have been like old Galaga or something like that, and just hitting the buttons all over the place.
Pew pew.
Exactly. But with that, we're going to close out this episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to my wonderful crew here on the Union Federation. And with that, hailing frequencies are now closed.